My name is Justine Doiron. We're in the NYT cooking studio kitchen, and today we're making creamy ramp pasta. This recipe started because I think ramps are so often treated as the supplement to a dish instead of the main star of the dish. So I wanted a pasta that wasn't a pesto pasta, but felt just as indulgent and rich and ramp forward. So that's what this is. It's like creamy, kind of mac and cheese reminiscent. Ramps are very in demand this time of year, and I think it's first because of how they taste. So they're called wild garlic in the UK, which I think describes them best. They're very garlicky, but a little herbaceous. Anytime you use a ramp, you're getting a ton of flavor. This recipe for a weeknight dinner or to kind of bring somebody into ramps who's never tried them before, it's a really good fit. So when you're talking to somebody who doesn't know a lot about ramps, there's a lot to cover in a little bit amount of time. So the first thing is the most important thing, they're wild, so they can't be farmed. And I think that's why we all go nuts. It's because it's a scarcity thing. Like if I can't have it when I want it, that's why we're so excited about it. The second thing is the flavor is the reason like everybody goes nuts. We talked about that. They're so delicious. But the third thing is harvesting scarcity, which a lot of people have a lot of different information. I've been able to talk to farmers, people who have ramps in their backyard. Everybody seems to have a different answer on how to harvest them sustainably. Here's what I've collected and know to be true. Ramps that look like this that are cut without the root, these are considered the most sustainable way to harvest ramps. What you'll see at the farmer's market a ton, and what we got at our farmer's market, are rooted ramps, which are ramps that have just been pulled up by the root. That's the easiest way to harvest them. And immediately a lot of people see this and they freak out because they're saying ramps are an endangered species in some areas. We can't have this going on. But ramps are also rampant in some areas. And farmers who work in those areas and work that land will rip up half of the colony at the beginning of the season, and then for the rest of the colony, trim them like this. So it's not always a bad thing to see rooted ramps. You want to avoid them if you don't know the farmer. But if you're at the farmer's market and you see a bunch of ramp roots, your farmers are not bad people. They're just covered in ramps. And what a dream. Let's say you did have the ramp with the root on. What I like to do is just completely submerge the ramps in water because they're dirty. And then just trim off the root, and then you'll have really gorgeous ramps that also will keep so well in your fridge if you just wrap them in a paper towel. We're just chopping up our 4 to 6 ounces of ramps. Everything kind of starts and ends in a food processor in terms of the prep. The only reason I chopped the ramps is because they can get caught in the wheels of the food processor and then spin, 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 and never chop. We're using garlic and ramps because ramps kind of adapt to whatever flavor you give them. So for example, if you make a cheddar ramp biscuit, like those ramps will melt down and then become more scallion-y and a little bit sweeter. So the garlic here is because we want this to be a garlicky pasta. And along with chopping up the ramps, this has been one of my favorite techniques, so if you start seeing it in a lot of my recipes, you'll know why. But instead of using lemon juice, I've started chopping up the entirety of 1/2 of a lemon. This is taking out the skin and the seeds because those tend to be really bitter. When you put lemon flesh in olive oil, a magical thing happens. It starts to obviously cook down, but then the olive oil gets into it and it starts to char a little bit and caramelize. So lemon goes from really bright, really acidic to kind of sweet, still subtly acidic, and charred. And it's so good. 3 tablespoons of miso. I'm looking for like we're about to make pesto. The reason is if the garlic cloves are too big of pieces, then you're gonna get garlic clove pieces, and that's not nice. I also want the lemon to be almost pulverized in this. We're almost there. I'd say we're 2/3 of the way there. Oh, and it smells very, very good. Okay, that's what we want. It's kind of like a zug or the beginning of a pesto. We are gonna start with our pasta just for timing. So the pasta cooks in 8 to 10 minutes, so does the paste. We're here to make ramps efficient. Boiling water, a lot of salt. This can work with any pasta shape you like. Rigatoni is really good, spaghetti is really good. I recommend orecchiette or gemelli because I think they're fun. So now that our pasta is in, we're gonna put a high-sided saute pan over medium-low heat, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and a tablespoon of butter. So I like to use in any pasta recipe, olive oil for the fat and also partially the flavor, and then butter for the emulsifying factor and especially the flavor. 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. If you don't like spicy food, please still add this. Sometimes things can feel a little flat without a little bit of heat to them. It's one of those trust me things, but I tested it with and without. I would never lead you astray. That's nicely sizzling, so our paste is gonna go right in. And so we're on medium-low heat right now because this paste, I want it to slowly cook from a bright green color to an army green color. So my favorite thing is that the ramp paste immediately soaks up all the fat. Like, did you see that the olive oil and the butter just, that, you didn't need that sound effect, but that is what happened. And it will take that fat, toast a little, and then release it. You're also gonna see it become really, really bright green, like I said, and then 3 minutes later, turn more army green. Sometimes we have to sacrifice color for flavor, and this is one of those times. I grew up in Missouri, which does have ramps, but I grew up in, I wouldn't say a food desert, but it's like a very standard American diet desert. And so when I got to New York and started going to farmers markets, I became a little bit of a junkie of what is this and why is everybody so excited about it? And so in 2021, I bought my first batch. I was doing social media at the time, so that's when I learned that there's so much more to ramps in terms of culture, history, how they're important to different people. And I think that's also what got me hooked. Like, it's really an interesting ingredient. And that brought me to ramps. Perfect, this is army green, so we're in a good spot. So we're gonna go in with our mascarpone. I also tested this with ricotta and I tested it with heavy cream, but I chose mascarpone because it's got a nice tanginess to it. I know I'm gonna need it, so I'm gonna add like a little bit of pasta water. I think the starchiness makes the sauce more glossy and delicious. Obviously, it helps the sauce emulsify, cling to the pasta. And now we mix. And our lemon from earlier, our lemon half, we did not forget about it. Is right here in wedges, because sometimes you need a little. And that is easy, creamy ramp pasta. Feeling very lucky to have this because we only get this season every March and April. Good for if you have somebody in your life who hasn't had ramps before and you want to show them this is what a ramp tastes like. It's really green. I know we said sacrifice color, but I don't think we need to sacrifice. Very smooth for the fact that we just, blitzed up a ton of green things and a ton of garlic. I love this. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. If you never have mascarpone in your house, this is worth getting it because it's so smooth and it just melts into everything. So you have this really, really delicious rampy, my favorite term of this video, rampy paste. And then all of this cheese kind of just turns it into a perfect sauce. I love making this recipe vegan because I dabble in the, oh, I have too much silken tofu in my kitchen. What do I do with this silken tofu? I was testing this recipe a lot of times, testing all my alliums. And I had silken tofu, tested it with that, and it's a really good vegan sub. Perfect sub for the mascarpone. We really wanted to see the difference because we have the chance to see the difference here. So I have only olive oil in this pan and it's soaked up the fat in the exact same way. So this is 4 ounces of silken tofu. I think silken tofu is kind of crazy as an ingredient in the way that when you blend it with a little bit of water, it becomes glossy, creamy, melty, but it's really, really, really effective and really delicious. I've never used a Vitamix before. What a treat. Okay. It might take a minute. Nice. It is looser because just by the nature of getting it into a creamy consistency, we need the water to loosen it up. And because that water will evaporate as that sauce cooks, then it will seize back into the same texture as the mascarpone. And then just to show what it really can do, we'll go into the sauce. And so remember when the mascarpone melted? The tofu's kind of already there. Let me get it a few more stirs. And I will say my husband's preference is the tofu version, which I find interesting. He's like the biggest meat eater on the planet, and so I won't tell him about the tofu things. Yeah, it's interesting to him too. He still doesn't know. And honestly, if I'm making this at home, I'm making this version because the ingredients are cheaper and it makes me feel like I got 4 grams more of protein. Oh, it was really good. Mmm, interesting. Okay, so you know how dairy sometimes like wicks flavor a little bit? Like it mutes it, like it tempers? Not having the dairy but still having the creaminess from the tofu makes this intense. Ooh, oh, it's my favorite too. Me and my husband, compatible. If you are debating on whether to make this recipe or if you're trying to figure out what to do with your ramps, I think this is a good intro. That's what I want to say about this recipe. Like, this is the easy way to understand why this ingredient is important and delicious. The whole recipe is on nytcooking.com, along with a few others, many others, so you can see the link below.